There is a strange habit among many people. The moment an idea is born in their mind, they rush to tell it to the world. They announce their plans before they take their first step. They speak of their dreams before they have built any strength to protect them. And then they wonder why their energy fades, why doubt enters their heart, and why their purpose loses power. When an idea is shared too early, it begins to lose its original power because it leaves the protected space of the mind and enters the noisy world of opinions. An idea is born fragile, like a spark that needs time to become fire. In its early stage, it depends entirely on belief, emotion, and quiet determination. When it is exposed too soon, it must face doubt before it has gathered strength. Most people do not attack your idea intentionally. They simply judge it through their own experience, their own failures, and their own fears. Their words may sound practical, but hidden inside them is limitation, and limitation weakens the confidence of the one who listens. An idea grows through concentration. It requires repeated thought, steady focus, and persistent action. When you speak it aloud too early, your attention shifts from building it to defending it. Instead of asking how to make it real, you begin explaining why it can be real. This change of direction drains energy. The mind cannot create and justify at the same time with equal force. One task feeds progress, the other feeds delay. There is also a silent danger in early disclosure. The mind rewards expression as if it were achievement. Speaking about a goal gives a feeling of movement, a sense of accomplishment without effort. The brain feels satisfaction simply because the idea has been released into words. This satisfaction weakens urgency. Hunger for action is replaced by comfort of conversation. The desire to work is softened by the pleasure of being heard. Ideas need privacy to mature. In silence, they are shaped into plans. In isolation, they are refined into strategies. In secrecy, they grow roots that cannot be easily shaken. When an idea is still forming, it must be guarded from interruption, just as a plant must be guarded from storms before it becomes strong enough to stand. Those who speak too soon place their dream in the hands of others. Those who wait place their dream in the hands of discipline. The difference between the two is the difference between noise and movement. One creates attention, the other creates structure. One attracts comments, the other attracts results. History shows that great achievements were first developed in quiet thought before they appeared in public form. The mind works best when it is not distracted by applause or resistance. It creates with greater force when it is free from the need to prove itself. An idea that remains unspoken is not weak, it is protected. It is being tested privately, corrected quietly, and strengthened through effort rather than words. When an idea is carried in silence, it becomes part of character. It shapes habits, it directs behavior, it influences decisions without announcing itself. It becomes a private mission instead of a public promise. And a private mission is harder to abandon than a public promise because it is not built on opinion. It is built on purpose. Power is not in the announcement of a plan, but in the persistence behind it. The fewer people who know what you are building, the fewer voices can interfere with how you build it. An idea spoken too early must survive the world before it has learned how to survive itself. Silence is a shield for purpose because it keeps the mind free from unnecessary interference. When a person carries a goal quietly, the goal stays close to the heart and is not scattered among many voices. Focus is born in stillness. Noise divides attention, but silence gathers it into one direction. Every ambition needs space to breathe, and that space is created when there is less explaining and more observing. A quiet mind listens to itself more clearly and hears the call of its own intention without distortion. Purpose weakens when it must constantly justify itself. The moment a person begins to explain what they are doing, they invite judgment into a process that requires faith. Judgment does not always come as opposition. Sometimes it arrives disguised as advice. It may sound wise and logical, yet it pulls the mind away from its original path. Each suggestion becomes a possible turn, and too many turns create confusion. Silence keeps the path straight because it reduces the number of directions offered by others. Focus demands protection. It is not strong by nature. It becomes strong through habit. Silence trains that habit. When there is no need to report progress, the energy that would have been spent on talking is used for working when there is no audience. Effort becomes more honest. The work is done for growth, not for praise. This kind of effort builds inner discipline instead of outer image. Silence also prevents emotional leakage. Speaking above, UT plans releases emotional pressure, but it also releases emotional strength. The excitement that should push action forward is spent on words instead of movement. By staying quiet, the emotion is preserved and transformed into labor. The fire stays inside, feeding the will instead of warming the crowd. There is strength in moving unnoticed. A person who works in silence develops independence of thought. They learn to trust their own judgment rather than searching for agreement. This trust sharpens focus because it reduces doubt. Doubt multiplies when many opinions enter the mind, but confidence grows when the mind is alone with its task. Purpose becomes clearer when it is not forced into conversation. Silence creates a boundary between intention and distraction. It draws a line that says the work comes first and the explanation comes later. This boundary protects time. Time is the true currency of progress. Every minute spent defending a dream is a minute taken from building it. Silence returns those minutes to the mission. The world is full of voices, but achievement is born from listening to one voice only, the one that directs effort. When a person learns to value quiet, they also learn to value depth. They stop chasing attention and start chasing accuracy. They stop reacting and start creating. Their actions become deliberate instead of emotional. Their steps become measured instead of rushed. Purpose is not loud. It does not need to shout to exist. It grows stronger when it is carried like a secret oath. Focus is not dramatic. It is calm, steady, and persistent. Silence allows both to live without interruption, to mature without disturbance, to move without a knock. Liddy remains unchanged. Over time, this creates a habit of expression instead of execution. The mouth becomes active while the hands remain idle. Talking also spreads energy outward instead of inward. Energy should be stored and focused, like pressure behind a closed door. When it is released through speech, it escapes before it can be used. The excitement that should be turned into discipline is turned into storytelling. The vision that should shape daily behavior becomes entertainment for others. Each explanation becomes a small leak in the reservoir of willpower. There is another illusion created by constant talk. The person begins to identify as someone who is about to succeed rather than someone who is working to succeed. This identity feels safe. It avoids risk. It avoids failure. As long as the plan remains a topic instead of a task, it cannot be judged by results. Talking delays exposure. It keeps the dream in a protected form where it cannot be tested. Real progress is uncomfortable. It requires repetition, patience, and resistance. It demands that the individual face their own weakness in private. Talking avoids this confrontation. It shifts attention away from effort and toward image. The individual becomes more concerned with how their future looks to others than with how their present actions shape it. The more a person speaks, the less pressure they feel to act. The mind believes it has done something simply by describing what it will do. This belief is a quiet enemy. It steals momentum without making noise. It replaces struggle with speech. It replaces discipline with discussion. It replaces construction with conversation. Action does not need to announce itself. It grows in silence and shows itself through change. The body becomes trained. The skill becomes sharper. The habit becomes stronger, and the character becomes different. None of this comes from talking. It comes from repetition and persistence carried out away from attention. When a person learns to reduce their words, they increase their work. When they reduce their explanations, they increase their execution. When they stop telling others what they will become, they begin the process of becoming it. Step by step, hour by hour, decision by decision, guided not by the pleasure of speaking, but by the discipline of doing and the pressure of unfinished work that remains waiting for the next effort to be applied and the next action to be taken, and the next obstacle to be faced, and the next weakness to be challenged, and the next habit to be formed, and the next level of effort to be demanded, and the next moment of resistance to be met, and the next proof of progress to be earned through movement rather than through words. When a person depends on approval, their effort becomes tied to reaction instead of purpose. They begin to measure their progress by the faces around them rather than by the work within them. Approval is a fragile fuel. It burns only when others provide it, and it disappears the moment attention shifts elsewhere. A person who works for approval must constantly perform, constantly impress, constantly prove. This turns growth into a show instead of a process. The mind becomes occupied with how the journey looks instead of how the journey feels and functions. Persistence cannot survive on applause. Applause comes and goes, and so does motivation that feeds on it. When approval is present, effort feels easy. When it is absent, doubt enters. The individual begins to ask whether the work is worth continuing. This question is born from dependence. It is not about the task itself, but about the response it receives. As soon as the response weakens, the will weakens with it. This is how many ambitions fade, not because the goal was impossible, but because the encouragement was temporary. Belief works differently. Belief does not wait for permission. It does not require witnesses. It does not need agreement to exist. It is built from repeated decisions made in private. It grows when effort is applied without recognition. Each small victory strengthens it. Each difficulty refines it. EF does not ask if others approve. It asks if the task must be done. It answers that question with action rather than with explanation. A person who believes in their purpose continues when there is no audience. They move forward when no one understands. They persist when no one praises. Their energy comes from alignment with their own intention. This alignment creates endurance. It allows the individual to withstand delays and disappointment without changing direction. Where approval demands immediate reward, belief accepts long struggle. Approval shifts focus outward. Belief shifts focus inward. One searches for validation, the other searches for improvement. One fears criticism, the other studies failure. One pauses when doubted, the other adapts when challenged. These two paths lead to very different results. The first creates sensitivity, the second creates strength. There is also a subtle danger in being liked. When a person is praised too early, they may confuse popularity with progress. They may begin to protect their image instead of pushing their limits. They avoid risk because risk might disturb approval. They avoid growth because growth might expose weakness. Over time, comfort replaces challenge and persistence fades into routine. Belief welcomes discomfort. It understands that pressure produces capacity. It allows the individual to move through uncertainty without collapse. It teaches patience. It creates a relationship with effort that is not emotional but disciplined. This discipline becomes a quiet engine. It does not need encouragement to run. It runs because it was built to run. When a person depends on approval, they borrow strength from others. When they depend on belief, they generate strength from within. Borrowed strength is limited. It is reduced when others are tired, distracted, or uninterested. Generated strength renews itself through action. Each step reinforces it. Each result confirms it. Each obstacle sharpens it. Persistence is the ability to continue when the reward is distant and the struggle is near. Approval shortens vision. It demands quick proof. Belief lengthens vision. It tolerates delay. It understands that results are not always visible at the beginning. It keeps working while others question. A person who seeks approval will stop when the crowd changes. A person who holds belief will continue when the crowd disappears. One moves with opinion, the other moves with purpose. One is guided by reaction, the other is guided by conviction. One requires reassurance, the other creates assurance. Belief does not shout. It does not defend itself. It does not argue for its existence. It shows itself through consistency. It shapes habits. It directs choices. It forms identity through repeated action. While approval fluctuates, belief stabilizes. While praise fades, belief remains. The more a person builds belief, the less they require permission. The less they require permission, the stronger their persistence becomes. Their effort becomes private. Their discipline becomes personal. Their motivation becomes internal. Their journey becomes independent of noise, opinion, reward, or recognition, driven by a decision made inside and carried forward through effort rather than applause, through endurance rather than admiration, through steady work rather than sudden praise, through inner alignment rather than out Agreement, through commitment rather than compliments, through conviction rather than consent, through repetition rather than reassurance, through action rather than approval, results carry a language that intentions can never speak. The world listens to proof because proof removes the need for argument. A person may declare great plans, but until those plans are shaped into visible form, they remain only sound. Intention lives in the mind, but evidence lives in reality. One can be imagined, the other must be earned. This is why outcomes hold authority while promises hold only hope. Intentions are easy to create because they cost nothing. They require no sacrifice, no patience, and no resistance. A person can form them in a moment and abandon them in the next. Results are different. They demand time, consistency, and discomfort. They require the individual to face obstacles instead of explaining them away. This effort gives results their weight. When something is difficult to achieve, it becomes difficult to ignore. The mind respects what it sees more than what it hears. This is true for the individual and for the world around them. When a person produces results, they strengthen their own belief. When they speak only of intentions, they leave belief untested. The inner voice becomes louder when action supports it. Confidence grows when behavior matches desire. Without this match, intention becomes fragile, easily shaken by doubt and delay. The world also responds differently to results. It questions words but accepts outcomes. It debates plans but studies success. When a person arrives with evidence, there is little to discuss. The conversation changes from possibility to process, from whether it can be done to how it was done. Results shift attention from potential to performance. Intentions invite sympathy. Results invite respect. Sympathy is emotional and temporary. Respect is practical and lasting. A person may receive encouragement for what they hope to achieve, but they receive opportunity for what they have already done. Doors open for proof, not for promises. Trust is built on what has been demonstrated, not on what has been described. There is also discipline hidden inside results. They are not random events. They are the product of repeated choice. Each action adds a small piece to a larger structure. Over time, this structure becomes visible. What appears sudden to others is the outcome of many unseen steps. Results reveal the truth of effort. They show how time was used, how focus was applied, and how persistence was maintained. Intentions can be shared without cost. Results must be carried with responsibility. Once a result exists, it becomes part of identity. It changes how the individual is perceived and how they perceive themselves. It becomes a reference point for future effort. It creates momentum. It turns belief into habit and habit into character. The difference between intention and result is the difference between direction and distance. One points forward, the other shows how far the journey has gone. Direction is necessary, but distance proves movement. Without distance, direction remains theoretical. Without movement, intention remains static. When a person relies on intention alone, they live in the future. When they build results, they shape the present. The present is where power operates. The future is only influenced through present action. Each result is a statement written in effort rather than ink. It does not need explanation because it stands on its own. It does not require defense because it is visible. It does not depend on belief because it demonstrates reality. The strongest message a person can send is not what they plan to do, but what they have already done. It is a message understood across languages and cultures. It removes uncertainty. It replaces speculation with substance. It shows that thought has been translated into form, and that desire has been turned into discipline, and that imagination has been converted into structure, and that effort has been repeated long enough to become proof, and that time has been invested with purpose, and that struggle has been accepted as part of the process, and that work has been chosen over talk, and that evidence has been produced where excuses once lived, and that reality now carries what once existed only as an idea, and that this evidence now stands where intention once stood, and that this standing is what gives it meaning and what gives it power and what allows it to be seen without explanation and understood without persuasion and recognized without announcement and carried forward without argument and built upon without hesitation and trusted without debate and valued without doubt and accepted without conditions and allowed to speak for itself through the simple fact that it exists